But yes, the poll, 73.3% of the votes. Do you have a guess who wins?
Honestly, I'm probably gonna say
We have, Chad, I'm just gonna say I feel bad for you because
I know, dude. I'm piecing it together in my head as we're going.
These four matchups,
yeah, dude,
are going to be
murder
brutal.
him.
Pain.
yeah.
Pain. Great pain.
And we're going up against.
All
Yeah,
right.
Okay, now it's us.
Yep.
Now it's everyone.
Yeah.
It's everyone.
Okay,
What would it mean if my screen's black? Can you hear me?
I can hear
Yeah.
you. Just
Yeah,
your
definitely.
we.
What the fuck?
If it stays like this, Dad can just draw you.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Hello, welcome back to Showboys. We are in the heat of March Madness. We have our final region-specific episode here, rounding it out with Sony, with our very own Chad. Chad, what's up, dude? How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. I'm excited to be here. I've been
Yeah,
waiting for this. This is like my wheelhouse here.
Yes.
Like the show March Madness, it was cool and all, but this is where I survive.
This is
right
your
here.
jam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the perfect Sony fanboy to represent Sony.
Yeah.
I mean, this works
Yeah.
out. But yeah, so listeners, if you're back and you've seen the other 3 March Madness episodes, I'm sure you understand the gist of what's going on. But before we get into the rules and the breakdown and the flow of the show, we got to shout out our top tier patrons, Tim B, Yusuf H, and Joe C. You guys rule, as always. All of our other patrons, thank you so much for your support. Head over to patreon.com/showboyspodcast. Check it out, how you can support us. If you are interested, or if you don't know what Patreon is, go over there and check it out. It's a cool way you can support creators monthly, and you get all sorts of perks and bonuses and stuff, depending on the level of support you have. So if you're interested, go check it out, and we appreciate it. With that being said, yeah, Sony March Madness. This episode will flow just like the other 3 did. We will.
Oh man, I thought that was me for a second. I was like, no.
What he's trying to
Each and every
say.
time.
What he's trying to say is that it will flow like the other episodes did.
In which it is currently going just in line like the other episodes.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. Mike he's flashed back to some type of memory and he's just stuck here in the
yeah.
present.
It's that Florida Wi-Fi, man. Maybe it's real
Yeah.
bad down there in Florida.
It has to be. It has to be. But it always has him looking so peaceful, like he's enjoying
Yeah, it
that
does.
flashback.
Hey, he's back.
Welcome back.
Thank you for coming back. I did not
Yeah.
want to be in the hot seat anymore.
I'm sorry. So where were we? Where?
You
You
were
were
in a
enjoying, like-
wonderful flashback that
It
we
must have
did
been
not
so
see.
good that
Oh,
you just
nice,
left.
You just
Nice.
left. Enter the
Um,
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, apologies. I just ordered a new thing, so it'll be here Tuesday. But that won't help tonight. Hopefully, that'll be the last time.
That's
Uh,
great
get
that it
a lot of
caused you such strife that you in the time that you were off ordered something to fix it.
Yep. I had the part in the Amazon cart since like Friday, and I was like, I'm not gonna order it yet. You know, we'll see if we can get through the weekend. No, we got to order it. But anyways,
How to do it.
tonight, this episode will run just like the last 3. We will be going through the Sony region of the bracket round by round until we are left with one Sony exclusive game to represent Sony in the Final Four. we will be using the poll results for the determining the round 1 match. Unless, oh no, did I freeze again?
You did.
li-
You
a
froze
little
half a
bit.
second. For
A
half
little
a
bit.
second.
Every time you guys chuckle, I'm like, oh gosh, here we go.
But dude, it just makes my butt pucker every time because I think it's my internet because I was just ready to like, what is going on here?
Oh geez.
There'll be a
So
lot of editing in this one.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
we heavily rely on the poll results for round 1. Unless you think the voters were so like egregiously wrong in the game that they voted for winning, you could make an argument for the other game, and
Okay.
if it's convincing enough, we'll allow you to overturn the poll. But essentially, after round 1, you will go through each matchup and walk us through which game you think deserves to move forward. We'll either agree with you or disagree and go from there. Also, as we go through each matchup in round 1 has seemed to have taken the longest because we kind of introduced the games and stuff. So we'll rely on you to introduce the games, kind of give like a brief description or explanation or your experience with it, and then we'll read the poll results and then move on. So with that being said, here is the criteria that we're using this year. Again, for round 1, this doesn't play too much a factor. However, in round 2 and forward, we'll be using this just like we did last year, Chad.
Yeah.
And mainly for like the debate rounds, of course. But we have 6 categories this year. Number 1 being the gameplay mechanics, the overall quality, depth, and complexity of the gameplay mechanics, including gameplay loop, controls, balance, replayability, and technical performance. The second category of the story and narrative. This is the overall quality of the game's story, character development, and narrative structure, and how the narrative unfolds using gameplay. The third category is the aesthetics. So this is the overall quality of the visual presentation of the game, including the graphics, the art style, but also music, sound design, all of that fun stuff. The fourth category is innovation, how the game pushed the boundaries or introduced new ideas or mechanics within the genre or the gaming industry as a whole. Was the game able to make a noticeable shift in the gaming field or in the field of gaming? The fifth category is the fun factor. So how enjoyable and entertaining the game is, taking into account like your personal experience with it, also the general, opinions of the audience as a whole. And then we have a bonus category, community engagement. This is the impact made with the audience, including memorability, size of player base, impact on the player community, and post-launch support. So those are the categories. Do we have any questions across the board before we dive in to round 1?
Nope, nothing.
All right. I feel rude. I didn't even ask the judge panel how they were doing tonight.
You did,
Kumno.
well, to be fair, you enter the Twilight Zone before you can do so. So
Well,
Yeah,
we've
that's
only been together the past like 5 nights. So
Yeah,
we should have an idea. of
probably
how
the
we're
same
doing.
as the last.
yeah, just a little peek behind the curtains. Dad, Kumino, and myself have been we've recorded like 7 podcasts in the last like 2 weeks. So it's
Yeah.
basically like every other night we're doing this. So, but Kumino, how you doing tonight, man?
Oh yeah, brother. I just have to let you know that Macho Madness is back in the house and is ready for this PlayStation Madness. Oh yeah. So I'm feeling wonderful. I'm feeling fantastic. Yeah.
I appreciate the hoodie choice too. I mean, you almost blend
Yes.
in with the background, so I like that. Very
Oh,
colorful.
yeah.
Dad, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I actually got a really nice nap earlier, so
Nice. Classic old man.
feeling recharged. Old man nap.
All right.
Gotta have it.
Pleasantries
you?
I'm doing well, just fine, guys. I'm just
Better than your
living the
internet.
dream over here with my booty cheeks Florida internet. But let's get into round 1. Pulling up the poll now. our first matchup, we have we'll go give the rundown of how the seedings happen, the matchups happen. So, returning listeners, you will remember that we determine the seedings by taking the average rating of the game across like 3 different rating sites, review sites. The highest rated game is the number 1 seed, all the way down to the lowest rated game being the number 16 seed, and the matchups were determined using the NCAA college basketball March Madness bracket. So we just took the seeds that they have in their first round, lined them up with ours. That's how the matchups were determined. And the list of games provided for Sony was given to us by Chad, and then we just kind of narrowed it down from the giant list that was provided, 16. So now it's time for match 1. The number 1 seed, The Last of Us Part 1, taking on Yakuza Like a Dragon. So Chad, tell us a little bit about these games.
So yeah, I mean this one in my mind, if this goes one way with the polls, I'll be blown away. But The Last of Us, obviously, I think probably The Last of Us is the best narrative-driven game ever made, without question. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. Came out in 2013, Naughty Dog game. It was their first game after starting to take a break from the Uncharted series. They're winding Uncharted down. Last of Us comes out. And we know now that it's got a very popular HBO show running alongside of it. So it's exciting because a lot of people that don't play games get to at least see the story, which is phenomenal, whether you play the game or you watch it in the show. Yakuza, on the other hand, this one's kind of obscure because this is their kind of reboot of the Yakuza series, I guess is the best way to do it. Moving on to a different protagonist, moving on to a totally different play style. This is a turn-based, Final Fantasy style, Persona style combat, where the old Yakuza games were beat 'em up games like karate games. So this is like a big jump. So it's not shocking to see that it's the last seed. Just because it's a big jump for a game to take, to be a beat 'em up game through 6 titles, and then all of a sudden magically wake up one day and now it's a turn-based JRPG basically with a heavy amount of grinding that you have to do in it as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how in depth we want to get on the games.
No, that's good.
That's good. Just a little initial. Okay.
Yeah.
Just the first round.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned it being the 16 seed, and I have all 4 versions of the brackets right now, our seeding of it. So I have their overall rating from 1 to 16, and looking at Sony, Yakuza being the 16 seed is rated 85.5. And it's the highest 16 seed in the tournament. And Sony as a whole has like the least disparity between the top, the number 1 seed, which is The Last of Us at 94, to the 16 seed 85. So that's less than 10 points difference from top to bottom. For comparison, Xbox, Halo at 95, Starfield at 66.
Oof, yikes.
Nintendo was the next closest, 94.5 to 82.5. But PC and Xbox have quite a big disparity.
Yeah, so I was actually looking at the games earlier. Yeah, there's like a lot. There's a hefty amount of above 90 games on the PlayStation bracket too.
Yes,
I think there was like maybe
7, 8 in the 90s or above.
Yeah,
half the bracket,
which is funny because I mean I guess it does make sense, but it's funny when you look at it that we didn't include any PS1 games because we had the time cutoff, right? It had to be before or after the year 2000.
Yep.
So none of the like big banger PlayStation 1 games that really built the brand are on here. So I thought it was funny that
I swear to God, because I looked at this list and I was like, it's a lot of games that are missing from this.
Yeah, there is, man. There is.
Yeah, we had to put a time cutoff or else it would just be.
Yeah, now, I'm talking about after 2000. That's the bad part.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to PlayStation, I don't know what's up with gaming companies thinking that multiplayer games are the way to go, but it is not. Like clearly
dude.
A man
yeah.
after Chad's own heart here.
Oh man, it infuriates me because we're seeing a huge issue in the gaming industry right now, where a bunch of people are getting laid off at these major studios, and I always bring up the prime example of the Suicide Squad. You take a world-renowned single-player studio that made 3 of the best games of the generation, and now you're going to put them on for, I think, like 8 years making a live service Suicide Squad game. It comes out and flops. So that 8 years was wasted. That studio's in shambles, bro. That studio's in shambles. Coming off the height of the Arkham trilogy, they come out with Suicide Squad, and now they're, 8 years of work down the drain. And I was arguing with somebody on Facebook about this. I was like, everybody's trying to find the next Fortnite. And he took that the wrong way of me saying that Suicide Squad was like Fortnite. That's not what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is they're trying to find that lightning in a bottle that Fortnite is.
Yeah.
But the problem with that strategy is if it goes the other way, it's a 50-50 split. It's either going to be a popular Fortnite style game, Helldivers 2, etc., or it's going to be Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Marvel's Avengers, those games.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You
Don't
can
bring
only
up
go
Marvel's
50%. Yeah.
Not to totally derail the episode, but yeah, as a creative rule in general, like I always try to dissuade myself from setting out to create something instead of like creating what is in front of me and what I'm passionate about. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like instead of trying to emulate something else and create something else, create like what you have in front of you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But it's hard to see, and they just seem so confused by it. They're like, we don't understand why nobody's buying our games and yada yada. It's like, whatever, dude. Like everybody else sees it.
Right. Yeah. If you're not doing it better than the person that you're trying to imitate, then what's the point?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are just some studios and a lot of studios that just aren't very good at listening to the fan base. I think Square Enix is a prime example. Square Enix is horrendous at listening to their fan base for 20 plus years. They're getting better at it now. But
I was going to say the better one to use for example would be EA.
Yeah. That's another one. Yeah,
we're going back to EA from the PC episode. If you listen, you know what I'm talking about. It's in the game. Yeah. We said it's in the game like 30 times.
Yes.
Right, I'm telling you, they're going to come after us.
Yeah. So the poll results here for matchup number 1, we have The Last of Us Part 1. Not surprisingly, taking the vote 86.7%. In favor of The Last of Us. So no objections. I will move The Last of Us forward to round 2. And the next matchup is the number 8 seed Grand Theft Auto 3 versus Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, our 9 seed.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, man, there's not a game on this list that I have more emotional ties to than Grand Theft Auto 3. Came out in 2001, kind of directly after, not directly after. I mean, it was maybe like a year later after 9/11. So the game actually went through a huge array of changes post 9/11 in the game, including cutting the wings off the one plane that you can find. That was originally like a full plane that you could fly around, and they made it like so difficult for that purpose. But there's not a game that I have more emotional ties to, and I don't think there's a game on this list that has more importance in the history of open world video games. This is not the very first open world game that ever came out, but it's the first one that really set the ball rolling, and you can tell because there's been countless studios trying to mimic this formula from 2001 forward. And it's really, I mean, without Grand Theft Auto 3, we don't have any of the Grand Theft Autos prior. We probably don't have Watch Dogs. We don't have a lot of the big open world games. Super, super important game. And dude, I just love it. I just love this game. I still go back and play it. It's like the most nostalgic game that I can play, dude, because I dumped probably more hours into this game as a kid than any game ever. And that's saying so, because I put like 300 hours into Sekiro. So that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
The other one, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This is actually the only game on the list that I have not played. But I did do a hefty amount of research going into this, but I knew, like, just looking at the bracket, I'm like, there's no way. While I agree that Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart looks amazing, it's actually probably one of the most beautiful games that I've ever seen. Gameplay looks awesome. Insomniac, of course, I'm a huge Insomniac fan. But yeah, it's going up against a Goliath here, bro. And it's just for my money, there's no other route to go, but you can read the polls away if you'd like.
Yeah, so 73.3% say Grand Theft Auto 3. So Ratchet and Clank got a few votes, and Ratchet and Clank don't, nothing personal. You're not the first in the tournament to get a real rough round one match. So
that's all it is, because you guys got to understand, like, Ratchet and Clank, they are very iconic. Like, they are the Mario for PlayStation.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So like you just have to understand, like, they just got a bad matchup.
They really did. They really did, especially this one, because this one looks awesome. And actually watching the footage and all the stuff I watched today, it actually made me want to go play it. And I don't know that I've ever played one outside of maybe one or two. I mean, there's a bunch of them. So I played one, but I can't remember. But this one looks awesome, dude. Like it is graphically amazing looking.
It is wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it to you like this. None of my friends, well, I ain't gonna say none of my friends, but my closest friends, they don't like RPG style games like that. They love Ratchet and Clank games. So that's how you know it's good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And let me argue the Grand Theft Auto 3 thing real quickly, because I know a lot of people are probably like, why is San Andreas not on here? Why is Grand Theft Auto 3 on here? So obviously I've talked on the podcast multiple times that I'm really not the biggest fan of San Andreas. I think it just did too much for the series. There was just way too much going on. Like, you had to keep them, you had to keep them fed. You had to work out. There's just a lot of stuff there that was a little too stuff that I would probably enjoy now as an adult gamer, but not as a kid. Like, I don't want to go to the fast food place and get some food because I'm hungry in a video game.
Right.
And
that's why I tell my son I can't play Grand Theft Auto now, because it took away from what it used to be.
Yeah. It's 100% it. And I think that Grand Theft Auto 5 does that area of the map better than San Andreas did. Again, just too much. 4 different cities, maybe. It was just too much in that game. Vice City, while I have probably just as many emotional ties to Vice City as I do 3, I just feel like 3 is the much more important game when you're looking at that trilogy. It's the one that set it off. It's the one that, put open world games on the map and really built that entire genre. So that's why it's on here and not the other 2.
Nice. Thanks for the clarification. Anxious to see this matchup. I feel like this
heartbreak number 1
is a tough one on Chad's emotional state here. Probably 2 of his favorite games, if I'm correct in my thinking here. But we have the number 5 seed Persona 5 taking on the number 12 seed Marvel's Spider-Man 2.
Ooh. First upset.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the first one that's on the list. Maybe even the only one on the list that's very difficult for me. Persona 5 came out in 2016. 8 years maybe since Persona 4, which was the original, the prequel, or not the prequel, the game before it. It's funny because I just finished Persona 3 Reload, the remake of Reload that just came out. And it actually made me dial back on Persona 5 a little bit. I think Persona 5 is a phenomenal game, but it almost has the San Andreas effect of just doing maybe too much all in one game. And while you're playing the game, it feels great. When you go back and play 3 or 4, it feels like, it's just a much, how do I want to say it, a tighter experience, those PlayStation 2 era ones. But Persona 5 is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. The art style is amazing. The story's probably the best out of any of the Persona games. Gameplay, again, is freaking phenomenal, and they added a lot of that into Persona 3. So the snappy gameplay, it makes turn-based games. It shows you that turn-based games still have a place in 2024 or 2016 per se when this came out.
Because
it
it's
just
still hot now. So
it's still hot. Huge game. I think it took me like 130, 140 hours to beat it. And that wasn't even doing everything. So it's a massive game. They're all really massive games. Persona 3 took me like 110. Spider-Man 2, on the other hand, this is so tough for me, man, because I think that Spider-Man 2 is, it won my game of the year last year. That really hasn't gone away. It could have been perceived as maybe recency bias when we did the thing, because it was like the game came out in October. I think we did the rankings in December, maybe January. Yeah. So it was very close to me playing it. But yeah, those feelings haven't really gone away, man. And New Game Plus just came out. So now I think that this game is now the complete game it should have been when it came out. So it's got New Game Plus, the ability to replay missions, the ability to change the time of day in the city. So those are things that were taking it away from me a little bit when I was playing it, because I got to the end and literally replayed it because I was like, I feel like I want more, but I can't play New Game Plus because it doesn't exist. So this one's tough for me. I don't know. Let's just go. Let's go for the polls. I just want to see what the polls say before I interject if I want
to. All right. First off, sounds like your Spider-Man 2 experience was my Mr. Robot experience. As soon as that show, the series ended, I was like,
I remember.
Immediately started a rewatch.
Yeah.
But yes, the poll, 73.3% of the votes. Do you have a guess who wins?
Honestly, I'm probably gonna say Spider-Man, because I think Persona is just not. This is the first Persona game that's been pretty mainstream, but I don't know if it's mainstream enough to hit the polls. We'll see.
Well, you nailed it. Spider-Man 2 takes it with 73.3%. Does that sit okay with you, Chadwick?
Does it? That's the question.
I know it does for me. I'm just saying. But I'm just me.
So, have you had people argue for one way or the other?
Yeah.
It's so tough, man. I don't know. I need it. Has anybody played? I know that Dad has played Spider-Man 2. Has anybody played Persona 5? I know Mike had played a little bit of it.
I've tried.
You've played it? The whole thing?
I own it.
You own it. Okay.
I own it. Strikers. Royal.
Strikers, dude.
4.
I was actually blown away by Strikers.
Yes.
Strikers is like a full-blown sequel to Persona 5.
Yes, it is. I freaking love it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like,
yeah.
All right, let's sick Dad and Kumno on each other.
Yeah.
No.
Kumno, have you played Spider-Man?
No, but my son has, and I enjoy watching him play it.
Okay, so you
because
have context.
he doesn't want nobody to touch his PlayStation.
Yeah. So this makes me so excited that you play Persona, by the way, because I always feel like I'm the only person on the panel that has ever played a Persona game. So,
well, yeah.
So yeah, okay, talk to me a little bit here. Sway me one way or the other. Let's go with. How about this? Let's go with Dad. Dad, you sway me for Spider-Man.
Okay.
So Spider-Man 1, yeah.
So we've done at least a couple episodes on Spider-Man in general, and we share a love for Spider-Man.
We do.
It's just, it's our bond we have.
It is.
Hey,
our symbiotic relationship.
Bond, Chad? I like what you did there.
Right, emotional damage. What are you doing,
dude? Yeah, I might have to quit if you go.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Wait,
the blackmail is real, ladies.
So, I got Spider-Man 1, and we had hyped up Spider-Man 2 back when it the trailer launched, and I'm like, I gotta beat Spider-Man 1 just so I can play. I even bought a PlayStation 5.
Right.
For
Spider-Man 2, yeah.
So we could talk about it. I mean, that wasn't the only reason, obviously, but it was a big reason. Spider-Man in general is my favorite hero of all time. Spider-Man 2, the video game, is probably my favorite video game of all time. Just because it ties in so many amazing story arcs. Being Spider-Man, playing as Venom. Come on, man.
Yes.
Come on, man. That was like the one of the best moments
ever. Yeah.
Best moments in for me gaming that I've ever had. Like my jaw hit the floor, bro. Like,
yeah, so did mine. Yeah, so did mine. And Brady's reaction to it was even better. Like he was like jumping up and down like he won the Super Bowl or something.
Yeah.
Okay, dude. Your time's up.
Okay.
Kumino, weed me up a little bit, please.
Got you. So you said you played 3 and you played 4. And you admitted that Persona 5, when it came to what they had you doing in the game, they added a lot. They was doing a bit much. I can wholeheartedly admit to that. But what 5 did that 3 and 4 didn't do was ramp the story up to 1,000.
Yeah.
They made you feel like you were part of the story.
Yeah.
And you were at risk. Like you had to accomplish the mission, the end goal.
Yeah.
You would sit down in front of that game and say to yourself, you know what, I'm gonna just jump on here for a couple of minutes, and then you will look over and the sun will be rising.
Yeah.
Persona 5, its art style, the music.
Good. Oh, dude, the music.
The music is good.
The music's bomb. Good. Yeah.
Like I said, like all of that is enough to just suck you in alone. Now I get it. Spider-Man will always be Spider-Man, and I love Spider-Man. Like I said, I love watching my son play it. He just don't want to let nobody touch his PlayStation. So I understand. I was that way about my games when I was a kid, but it's just Spider-Man. Like I see the story and it's an alright story, but it's just Spider-Man. But Persona, like I said, Persona makes it feel like the story is about you.
Oh,
not Peter.
Yeah, but the immersion in Spider-Man 2 was insane. You felt like you were Peter. You felt like you were Venom. Like the stuff that you were saying about Persona 5, you could have been saying the same about Spider-Man. Like if you didn't put a name to it, you could have guessed either one of these games.
Yeah.
One of the things that we fell back on at least the Nintendo episode, but maybe the other two regions too. When it comes to games like Persona that are a little more niche and have like a little narrower of an audience base, but still a super excellent game. It's like, which game could a casual gamer that doesn't know anything about either game turn on and have the most fun with? Not saying that should be like the end all be all, but again, just another thing to look at.
Okay, I mean I mean it's a good point, and I don't know that the average gamer could turn on Persona and have the time of their life. I will maybe fight you a little bit on the niche thing. I think Persona 5 is the game that broke Persona out of being niche.
Yeah,
I think their sales numbers prove that. Their ratings prove that.
It was the first one to actually go to other consoles.
Yeah,
making the way for the rest of the Personas to waking up and start getting a following.
That's true.
And I mean it's definitely got the best story of and a dark story at times. Not nearly as dark as Persona 3. There were times in Persona 3 I was like, shit, dude, this is really dark. Like very, very, very dark. Have you played Persona 3?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, it's just a dark story. But dude, this is a tough one. Can you tell me the percentages again for the votes?
73.3 for Spider-Man. And that would leave 26.7 for Persona 5.
I would say Spider-Man just because everybody likes swinging through the air. Because all of the videos that I ever seen on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, it's just people swinging through the city.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, dude, it does feel damn good in Spider-Man 2 to swing through that city.
It looked like it. It looked like it.
It feels
to go
phenomenal.
with you, Dad. Yes, if I was to feel like I was going to be Miles or Peter, or Eddie, it would be swinging through the city, gliding through the city, all of that stuff there. That's where I would feel at home at. So.
And I do think that Spider-Man 2 has pretty much done everything that Spider-Man 1 did and amplified it by 30. I mean, it's just everything's perfect in the game. So I will go with the polls on Spider-Man 2.
All right.
I just sweat that one out a little bit.
That was
deliberation of the night.
Oh man, I was
it was close. There, though, for a second, I was like,
honestly, if Kumino had not said I'd go Spider-Man 2, I probably would have went Persona.
Oh, Kumino.
So he swayed me. Even though he was supposed to be swaying me for Persona.
I was just saying,
traitor.
Spider-Man, like that's what it would be for me.
Yeah,
it was just gonna be me swinging through the city because that's all I really want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Our next matchup, we have the number 4 seed God of War, the 2018 remake, going up against Demon Souls, the number 13 seed.
So 2018 God of War. This one's special.
You love this game, right?
Yes.
Dang it! I was joking around. It must be Civ that hated this game.
Yeah, Civ's the one that hates
That's it. Okay.
So I will say that God of War really has never been my thing. I've played them all. I beat them all. It's never been like, I'm not gonna pre-order a God of War game. Not that they have midnight releases anymore, but I wouldn't have waited at a midnight release to get God of War.
Right.
That being said, taking Kratos into the next generation and actually making him a character in 2018's God of War, because Kratos before was just a mindless drone that you're beating people up with. There's really no character. There's no character there at all. And that was a lot of people's complaints with Kratos and the God of War series is he's just a mindless meathead, basically, right? Yeah. And this game entirely flips that on his head and gives him depth, gives him an actual character, gives him feelings, gives him a purpose, changes up the gameplay rather drastically too. It's a much tighter, slower experience than the previous games, which were like beat 'em up games, basically. And then I just think that it's, we talk about on the podcast all the time how we love like one-shot scenes in movies and shows, and this entire game is a one-shot. So the camera never cuts. And I think that is not only got to be very difficult to do in a video game, but also over the course of the game, because the game's not short. It's not like a 4-hour one-shot game. It's a pretty lengthy game. So that's just a cool little piece of information. And then just the fact that we have 2 characters, and it really almost kind of feels like The Last of Us in parts, where you have 2 characters, an adult and a child wandering through some crazy shit together. Plus easily one of the best opening boss fights of any game that I've ever played. I mean, that opening boss fight is epic, dude. Demon Souls, on the other hand, is a 2009 game that was remade for the PlayStation 5. And I don't know which, do we know which one we're doing here? Does it matter?
Let me check the date on the sheet. This is the remake.
This is the remake. Okay, which is fine. I mean, it is what it is. So this is actually the very first Dark Souls game from FromSoft. It's kind of the game that laid the groundwork for Dark Souls to take off in the future. And it's definitely held back by a lot of the mechanics in it. Even the remake, they adjusted a lot of the mechanics in it. It's still old feeling, even though it's remade, because they didn't want to deviate too much from what made Demon Souls. And by far, for my money, one of the hardest ones. Like that game's hard as fuck, dude. I consider myself pretty good at Souls games. We know this, and that game kind of kicked my ass. But I think it's an important game in the way that Grand Theft Auto 3 is. I think it literally built a genre, and Souls likes, whether you want to see it or not, that's a genre now. There are people making Souls likes, so it's it's a big step for a game to come out, lay the groundwork for multiple games in the future to copy. And that's still happening today. I mean, there were like 2 or 3 that came out last year, one that came out and was, I mean, in the running for game of the year. So I think it's a very, very important game. But let's go to the polls.
Well,
I think I know which way it's going to go, but
the polls, hard disagree with you, Chad. 100% for God of War.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
they never heard of Demon Souls.
Yep.
But I side with them anyway because I never played Demon Souls. I heard of it. I just never played it.
Yeah. Yeah, so Demon Souls is one of those games that was in dire need of an update. And we got that with the remake. And I think that it was a launch title maybe for the PS5 too. So it kind of showcased the PS5's power. That being said, I think what God of War did for the God of War franchise is far more important than a remastered game from, the original from 2009. So 100% God of War on this side as well.
Okay. Well, quick question before we move on to the next one. So being that he's walking around with his kid, do we still get triangle, wiggle the left stick, X square? We still get that? Okay.
Yeah. You definitely get the quick time events. They're not as. First off, dude, so I played God of War 2 on the PlayStation Vita. There's a quick time event in that, which is literally impossible to do on the Vita. I literally tried for like hours, and it was something simple like left analog stick to the left triangle. And it just was not working, dude. I don't know if it's just the analog stick on the Vita was so difficult to get it in the right spot or what. Yeah, I agree with you that I hate quick time events for the most part. There are games that do it really well. I think this God of War does it really well. Spider-Man, I think, does it phenomenally. Yeah. So it still has a place, but yeah, it's still there. It's just not as big of a part as the original trilogy was.
But do you know which events that I'm talking about?
I don't know if I know what events you're talking about. What do you mean?
What was it? Rule what? 34 from Nintendo?
Yes. Rule 34. Come on now. Kratos
Kumino's
always runs across one. And gotta have that quick time session.
Yeah, gotcha.
Now the bigger question is, will Pedro Pascal play Kratos?
Probably. Yeah, he's just going to play
another like fatherly figure leading a young child somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be ideal. I mean, I'm here for it. Whatever, he's just in everything now.
He's going to have to work out a lot.
A very hilarious version of Kratos.
It would be it's like a Saturday Night Live version of Kratos. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the other thing that I think God of War does importantly as well for the series is it moves away from Greek mythology. That's the original trilogy, and I think there's a couple like spin-offs as well, but they were all Greek mythology. This moves to Norse mythology. So it's like a total revamp of everything that God of War was. And I think it set God of War as, one of the top probably 10 games on PlayStation, where it was probably in sales numbers, the original trilogy was there, but I don't know, they just modernized it. I don't know how to really explain it.
So that's what it is. So it's a complete revamp.
Completely. Ground up. The gameplay is not the same. The story's not the same. Kratos actually has a personality. There's,
his voice is the same though.
If you took Kratos and took off his very obvious markings that when you see him, you'd be like, oh, that's Kratos. You could have sold this as a totally separate game from God of War. You could have sold it as a Viking game.
Okay. Cause I was thinking like time had progressed, and he had chilled out, met somebody new, had a kid. The mother probably died. And, like, that had happened because I knew he had a wife and a daughter.
So that is essentially what happens. I think it's like 150 years since the end of 150 years since the end of God of War 3. So that is what happens, but it does I don't want to say it completely revamps it and makes him a new character. That stuff in the original trilogy happened. But now it's revamped. It's moved away from Greek mythology. It's moved away from the beat 'em up, third person, crazy, mobs of enemies. And it's actually moved Kratos to somebody that doesn't just scream and yell the whole time.
It's matured.
Mature, yeah. That's exactly, yeah. This is like old man Kratos. That's the best way.
Right. He's become a father. He's settled down. He got his beer good.
Yeah.
Probably taking a few naps,
100% it. Yep.
Some naps.
This next matchup is also going to be a tough one, I feel like, for Chad. We have the number 6 seed Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, taking on Ghost of Tsushima, the number 11 seed.
Yeah, man. Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4 for my money, and I know that a lot of people will certainly fight me on this. Uncharted 4 is the best Uncharted game. It's close. Don't get me wrong. I think Uncharted 2 is very, very close, but there's just something about this game. Came out in 2016. It's the kind of capper to the Uncharted series for now. They left it maybe a little open-ended at the end to get more titles in the future. And there have been rumors that there are some studios, not Naughty Dog, working on a new Uncharted game. But it's man, it's Nathan Drake's first foray out of the PS3 generation. The Uncharted series, I think, you say that Ratchet and Clank is the Mario for PlayStation. I think Nathan Drake is the Mario for PlayStation, man. So that is it's the best series in gaming as far as I'm concerned. And it's funny because it was always like off in the distance. I had a 360 during the PS3 generation, practically the entire generation. And it was always like there. I could always see, I was like, man, those games look awesome. Maybe someday I'll get a PlayStation and play them. And sure shit, after my 5th Red Ring, I did get a PlayStation and I played all 3 of them back to back. And phenomenal games, dude. They're phenomenal games. Mm-hmm. And 4 is really, it's just, it's the perfect swan song for Uncharted. It's got some of the most emotional story beats of any video game that I've ever played. The combat is quick, snappy, responsive. Not that the old games weren't, but they still had that kind of PS3 coat of paint on it where it was a little janky in spots. Uncharted 4 is not that at all. Not to mention, stunningly beautiful game. I mean, there are vistas.
The water.
Yeah, there are vistas here that are literally breathtaking. And it's one of the only games that like the kids or Kirsten can watch and enjoy watching because it's just that mind-boggling of a game to watch. But on the other hand, Ghost of Tsushima really can be said, everything I just said could be said about Ghost of Tsushima. Stunningly beautiful game. We know now, I've said it 100 times in here, of like 800 photo screenshots from that game just because I can't play it for 3 minutes without being like, dude, this looks beautiful, and take a screenshot. There are shortcomings as far as what I would want from a samurai game in Ghost of Tsushima that maybe hold it back a little bit. I think the era of Ghost of Tsushima is a little off. It's not the era I think of when I think of samurai. Be honest, I didn't even know samurai existed in this era. And then they took some liberties. Like I think the katana wasn't even made until like 400 years after this game takes place. But I get where they were going. Everybody that ever makes a samurai game, it's always in the specific time frame. So they wanted to do something different. And it was cool to be kind of locked onto an island. And there's just so much good about Ghost of Tsushima. But it's a tough matchup with Uncharted 4 for me. But go ahead. I feel like I've talked about Ghost of Tsushima so much on here that like if you want more, it's here somewhere.
There's definitely plenty. Yes.
Yeah.
The poll, 66.7% voted for Ghost of Tsushima.
That doesn't help.
Surprising. I mean, what do you think? How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I think it's surprising. Yeah. It's surprising. It's not shocking. I think that. So here's the tough thing with Uncharted 4. To go with your argument, can a gamer jump in and enjoy it? I think they can. But the problem with being the fourth game in a series is that you really need to play in Uncharted 4, you certainly have to play the previous 3 games, because you're going to, all those emotional story beats that I was talking about are going to be entirely lost on you if you don't play those games.
Yeah.
So that I have to weigh that in a little bit, because you know, it's not easy. Ghost of Tsushima, you can pick up today and play it and you're going to enjoy it because there's not a game before it. Dude, it's hard. I don't know, man. I might need some help on this one. I don't know. It's hard for me to let go of an Uncharted game. That's my problem, because I think Uncharted is such a quintessential piece of PlayStation.
Yeah.
And I know nobody, Mike, you've played Uncharted 4, right?
Yeah,
because we did an episode on it. Dad, you've played.
I'm working through Tsushima.
Yeah. Kuno, have you played anything?
I played Uncharted 2.
Uncharted 2. Okay.
Great game, but doesn't
No
have
Ghost
that conversation.
Have you not played Ghost?
Again, my son is the one with the PlayStation 5, and he will not let nobody.
You gotta get that thing.
Yeah,
Man.
He needs grounded. Sounds like
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. You gotta get that. You gotta get in, and you're a big anime guy too, right?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
dude, you gotta get all over Tsushima, man.
I know, but you know, like, I'm not gonna buy him a game that he's not even gonna let me play it, because like that was kind of the deal. Like, well, you know, like, I'll buy you games for it, you know, but you know, I'm be playing it too. And he's like, nah,
nah, he ain't playing it.
I'm like,
yeah, that's a funny story, Dad, because that's not
great.
happening.
So what do you play on then? PC?
Yeah, PC, the Xbox One.
Well, there you go. It's coming to PC May 15th.
It's getting a port.
It is.
But I hold my excitement, back, considering all of the ridiculous port issues we've had recently with like PlayStation ports coming to PC. So, but yeah, so I was going to mention that the Ghost is coming to Steam, which is exciting for somebody like me. And for what it's worth, I would probably agree with the poll and move Tsushima forward, just from all the things that I've seen you post about, Chad, and the conversations that I've heard you and Nick have, and even Dad to some degree. Even though I do agree that Uncharted is like the face of Sony over the last decade plus or whatever, basically since PlayStation 3. It's Uncharted and The Last of Us. Ghost just looks so amazing.
Yeah, because it is.
So I guess since we have a pretty hefty Naughty Dog representation in the bracket already, I'm willing to let Uncharted go, because I think it'd be a little shitty, even though I think they really both deserve to move pretty far. Let's go with Tsushima. Since Insomniac got kind of snuffed earlier because they got put up against GTA 3, we'll give them a little. Oh, that's not Insomniac. What am I talking about? Sucker.
Yeah, no.
Never mind. I got a little lost there. But either way,
I'm like, yeah, like, hey, no.
let's
a true coin flip of a matchup.
Yeah, it really is.
The next matchup, excuse me, is Shadow of the Colossus. This is the remake, the number 3 seed, going up against Devil May Cry, the number 14 seed.
Yeah.
Devil May Cry wins. That's all.
Yeah,
all I have to say.
Yeah, this is this one's much easier for me. I am like the maybe one person in this world that thinks Shadow of the Colossus is largely overrated. I think really every game that studio has made is largely overrated. Eco is certainly overrated. Well, I can't remember the newest one they came out with, but anyway, it's like a giant monster hunting game. It's got absolutely one of the most frustrating control schemes I've ever played in a video game. It just, I don't know what it is, dude. It just does, my brain does not click with it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I've tried multiple times. It seems like a cool concept. Everybody loves it. I hate it. But that being said, I get that this is a heavily popular game. It got a remake, I think, 2018 maybe. And I think that remake maybe took care of some of the control issues. I don't know if that's true. Yeah. It's actually the same studio that did the remake for that, did the remake for Demon Souls as well, Blue Point. Devil May Cry, on the other hand, I love Devil May Cry just from the history of how the game came to be. And the history of the game is it was supposed to be a sequel to Resident Evil. And that's what it was built originally for, to become a sequel for either Resident Evil 1. I think it was Resident Evil 1. I don't remember exactly what Resident Evil. But the problem
it was Resident Evil 2.
Resident Evil 2. Okay. So it eventually deviated so far from what would be accepted as a sequel to Resident Evil that it actually became its own game. And
they said, F it. Just make it its own title.
And that's so cool, dude. And it's cool. That would be a cool story if it was a one game and, Devil May Cry came out, but it literally splintered off of Resident Evil and became its own pretty big franchise.
Yeah.
So I think again, with the history similar to Grand Theft Auto 3, a game that can do that, start as a sequel for a specific series, splinter off, become its own franchise that is virtually unrecognizable from that franchise that it broke off of. I think that's huge. So do the polls. I don't want to give my thoughts yet before we do the polls.
Well, it's a close one. Closest one so far of the match, or of the bracket, and 53.3% of the votes went to Devil May Cry.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to lose faith in everybody.
In humanity.
I'm like, first and foremost, is the main character of Shadows of Colossus in Marvel's versus Capcom.
Right.
No, it isn't.
Nope.
Is the main character of Shadows of Colossus in Super Smash Brothers? No.
Oh, the Smash Brothers comes back.
Oh, yeah. Here we are.
Like the fact that y'all even disrespected Dante and didn't give him a higher rating to blow this game out of the water.
Yeah,
that's disrespectful, guys.
That's what I'm saying, and that right there is why Shadow of the Colossus made the list, because I know it's a hugely popular game, and I know people love this game. It's just, I don't know, dude. The original, maybe it just doesn't translate well to trying to go back now and play it, but those controls are horrendous. It's like somebody with dyslexia made that game, and I'm now forced to try and act like I have dyslexia to play it.
The inverted controller scheme.
Well, it's like I don't even know if I could explain it. I don't even know if I can explain it. It's just the climbing mechanics are horrendous. You use like the triggers. It's just I'm so sick of hearing about Shadow of the Colossus. I'm so sick of hearing about that studio. I think their games are kind of trash, if I'm being honest with you. Let me look up and see what their newest one. Oh, The Last Guardian. That's what it was.
Okay, well, I've never even heard of this game. So can somebody please explain it to me?
Shadow of the Colossus?
Yeah, so I can understand why it's so popular.
So, I mean, I don't know if I can explain why it's so popular, because I'm telling you, I don't get it. Yeah, I don't get it. But it's basically a spectacle game. So you have these giant monsters that you have to hunt throughout a huge open 3D area. And they're big and they are cool. It's a cool spectacle, especially for 2005 when this game came out. It was it was a big deal to see these big, massive things in a game. But it's just one of those games that has gathered a cult following. And really, it's the studio that has gathered that cult following, not necessarily Shadow of the Colossus, even though I think that game is widely regarded as that studio's best game. It's the studio that, because I remember when The Last Guardian came out, people were like going crazy for it. And the trailers for it was like, dude, this looks like it was a PS2 game. The graphics are horrendous.
It's so bad. It looks so
absolutely
dull.
horrendous. Dude, so dull.
Oh.
It's like one of the worst looking games I've ever that I have ever seen in that era, especially too. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can explain why it's so popular.
Okay,
It's
well,
just,
with that being said, viewers that voted in the polls, I am disappointed in y'all.
You need to slap yourselves.
Right. Yeah. Look, listen, go find y'all the nearest nun and let her pop your hand with the ruler, okay? That's what you guys do. Because that was disrespectful to Dante.
I agree. I thought it would have been much more one-sided than that. That's almost a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah.
Good news, we have an odd number of votes, so we will not get a tie. We did get ties in the Xbox division, but I think that was the only one. But we have 2 matchups left here in the first round, and the next one is Bloodborne, our number 7 seed, going up against Horizon Forbidden West, the number 10 seed.
This hurts.
So, So I'll do Horizon Forbidden West first. This is a sequel to a game that really nobody saw coming. A studio that really had kind of some sort of footing during the PS3 generation, but really didn't. They were trying to build. Killzone was like a
I remember that game.
Maybe wannabe Halo, I guess is the best way to put it. And it had, don't get me wrong, it was a very popular game on the PS. Really, I think it started PS1, PS2 rather, and then PS3. It was popular amongst PlayStation fans, but it wasn't the Halo that they were trying to mimic, right? Horizon Zero Dawn is that studio stepping out, trying something new, much in the same way that Sucker Punch did with Ghost of Tsushima and finding massive success with it. And then Forbidden West comes out, and Forbidden West, for my money, is how you do a sequel. And even though we moved Spider-Man 2 on, and I love Spider-Man 2, I think Spider-Man 2 is a little short of a sequel. It's not in my mind, a sequel really should have a hefty amount of content. It shouldn't be the exact same size as the original game. That's just my personal belief. I'm sure there are people that will disagree with me. Forbidden West is how you properly do a sequel. That game's massive. There's a ton of stuff to do. It is one of the best looking games on the PlayStation 5, hands down. Some of the best lighting that you'll ever see in a video game. And who doesn't want to fight robotic freaking dinosaurs, dude? Like, that's just a badass concept. The other side, Bloodborne. Bloodborne is... It's an important game. It's the first exclusive game that From Software made exclusively for the PlayStation. It deviates story-wise from the original Souls, Dark Souls trilogy, but not as much gameplay-wise as a lot of people think. There are definitely a lot of stuff in Bloodborne that makes it feel really different. It's kind of like a gothic... I don't even know how to explain. Has anybody played Bloodborne? It's like a vampire-esque time. I don't really know how to explain it, but
it's dark, it's gritty, it's souls, but you're alive, and you hunted. It's good.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. It really is. It really is hard.
Because like I'm gonna put it to you like this: you like the Soul series, you're gonna love Bloodborne. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
The only thing that'll kill you is Bloodborne has way more loading screens.
Yes, and that is the big hang up for me. Wildly long loading screens. And for a Souls game, that's a dagger, dude, because you die a lot. And when you die, you don't want to sit on this loading screen. And that's why a lot of people are arguing that it needs a a remaster or something. It needs to come to the PS5. So when you die, you don't have to wait a minute and 30 seconds or whatever it is for the screen to load.
Did you say when that came out?
Was it like
Bloodborne came out
2003?
No,
Oh, wow.
Bloodborne came out
2015.
2015. So
Why did I think it was so far
for
back?
me, yeah, I don't know.
It's not
For
super
me,
old.
for me, it's not a far enough deviation from Souls to kind of stand on its own. I get that this was kind of their, and I think that without Bloodborne, we wouldn't have Sekiro. And Sekiro, I think for me, is that massive deviation from the Souls games as far as combat. Obviously, the basic setup of it is similar, but there's you could remove FromSoft from the title, the card on the front of Sekiro, and nobody would know that FromSoft made that, because really they follow the same kind of formula. They even did it with Elden Ring, just on a massive scale. It's the same basic formula that they have for all the Souls game. Bloodborne kind of kicked that door open to try something new without deviating too far from the original concept, where Sekiro broke that concept and did something new and exciting. So Bloodborne, I get that it's got its fans, and people are it's got very fucking vocal fans too. Like, they're very angry that this game is not on PlayStation 5. And I get it. I get that, especially with the loading screens. But for me, go to the polls. I already pretty much know where I'm going with this one. Hopefully, at least.
2/3 of the vote are for Bloodborne.
Wow, 2/3 of the vote are for Bloodborne.
Y'all back in my favor now. Thank you.
You've redeemed yourselves.
Redeem yourself.
I feel an argument coming.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know that I can. That's such a hefty. That's a big gap. I don't know if I can argue for. So, going off of what Mike had said earlier about, can an average gamer jump into one of these games and have a good time? A FromSoft game is never going to be that game.
No, it is
under
not.
zero
It is
circumstances.
No casual
Will
gamer
never.
ever.
No casual gamer is ever going to get into one of their games and have a good time.
Right. You're
Even-
not gonna be
even
like, I
hardcore
used to
fans.
play Mario when I was a kid and jump on here and no.
Yeah.
It will
Yeah.
murder you.
So, that being said, I think that while you're not going to have a good time, you're going to have the best feeling of accomplishment in gaming when you play a FromSoft game, because that, whatever boss you're fighting is going to whoop your ass 30 times in a row, and you're eventually going to beat them. And there's no better feeling really in gaming than that. And that's really what FromSoft is built on. That's their whole shtick. It's a very, very, very difficult game, but it's not an unfair game, right? If you die, it's because you screwed up. It's not the mechanics. It's not the camera. It's not any of that. It's because you did something you weren't supposed to. You screwed up. And that's
Soul Series is the of games is what sparked the term "get good."
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. And there are games that try to mimic that, but don't have that. FromSoft games have a tightness to them. Even Sekiro, that they're very tight. The controls are tight. The windows for everything are very tight. So it just feels so perfectly. It feels perfect, right? And there are games that try to mimic. There's a lot of games that do Souls-likes, but they don't do them properly. So I'm all right. We'll move Bloodborne. I'm fine with moving Bloodborne on, because I'm a huge FromSoft guy. I got to have some sort of FromSoft representation on my bracket. So
Nick's going to be sad. Actually, I don't even know if he's played Forbidden
He
West.
has not. He owns it, but he hasn't.
It's all right. I've owned God of War 2018 for, well, not since 2018, but it feels like that long, and I haven't opened it yet. So
yeah.
All right. Our final matchup in round 1, the 2 seed, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, and Subsistence.
Subsistence.
Yeah.
Sustenance.
I don't know where that came from.
That part's fairly irrelevant, so you don't really even need to say it.
And then it is going up against the number 15 seed, the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Oh boy. So here is my argument for Metal Gear. And this is a hard one for me to do because Metal Gear came out in 2004. I'm trying to think when Metal Gear 2 came out. I don't know if it could have hit the bracket. It might have been prior to the bracket rules, but Metal Gear 3 kind of has the San Andreas effect for me, where it's doing too much. Same concept. You have to like eat and do some weird shit in this game. But that being said, dude, I mean, Hideo Kojima is one of the best storytellers in gaming, and will remain that probably. And this is really his, on this generation, on the PlayStation 2 generation, this is like his swan song for Metal Gear. Metal Gear obviously went on and did a couple more games after this, huge games after this. But Metal Gear Solid 3 is the first one that kind of set the wheels in motion for what Metal Gear became into the next generations. Kind of semi-ish open world. Super excited for the remake. I don't know if this game holds up today if you go back and play it. It's hit or miss with the Metal Gear games for me personally. If it was my money and there were no rules, Metal Gear Solid would be on this. That's the most important game in gaming history. But we had to represent Metal Gear somewhere on the bracket, so 3 is why. That's why 3 is here. And then Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is a powerhouse, and we see it now. We met Final Fantasy VII. The original is responsible for bringing JRPGs into the mainstream. It's far from the first JRPG. It's probably not even the first 1,000 JRPGs, to be honest with you.
No.
But it is the one that really got traction in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's a wildly important game as far as that genre and Japanese games as a whole. Learned a lot from Final Fantasy VII. And when we look at the remake is maybe in competition with Resident Evil 2 in my mind for the proper way to remake a game. Because they could have taken a triangle strategy approach with that kind of art style and remade it that 2D, HD, whatever they call it. But they didn't.
That's what I call it.
It is beautiful. I agree. I agree. But they didn't. This isn't even turn-based. They didn't even keep that.
And that's what rebuilt it.
I was kind of talking shit about Square Enix earlier, and that's kind of what I'm talking about, where their fan base has been screaming like, we want the old school Final Fantasy turn-based, Final Fantasy Tactics, that stuff. They screamed it for 15 years before they finally started listening and came out with Bravely Default, Triangle Strategy. They're funneling games to that loud audience while still making their new Final Fantasy, if that's what you want to call it. It's deviated so far from its origins at this point that it's almost better to not even call it Final Fantasy. They're just doing it for the name, right?
Yeah.
But 7 is huge. I mean, it's a huge game. They're taking the original game, which was a long game. I mean, probably 100 hours maybe. And they're splitting it into 3 big, huge games. And the newest one just came out, Rebirth, maybe like around the same time Persona 3 Reload came out. So this is the proper way to do a remake in my mind, and probably the definitive way to play Final Fantasy VII now, without a doubt, because it doesn't hold up that well. I mean, I'm sure people that have a deep tie to that game will argue with me, but if you go back and play the original, it just doesn't hold up very well. To the polls. Sorry. I'm long-winded. I'm trying not to be so long-winded here. I apologize.
Hey, you're talking to the long-winded master over here. Okay. I feel you. The polls, they say, again, another 2/3 for Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. I think
had Solid been on here, Solid might have actually won.
Yeah. I agree. I think Solid is it should have been the game that was represented, but it was hinged by the rules of the bracket, right?
Yeah.
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 So
But
it
at the
sucks. I
same
hate.
time,
It was so close too. 2 years away
Yeah,
from being on the
Yeah, it
bracket.
was.
Right.
It was. Yeah.
but and then
I love that
here's the
game.
thing about both of them, and this is me going back to it. Both of the main characters are in Smash.
Yep.
That's been
Yeah.
basically our criteria throughout the
That
tournament
should have
so
been
far,
the
Chad.
criteria.
It's like
So,
it's a
it
character
in
in
Smash?
Smash.
Yeah. So, I was wrong earlier. 2001, Metal Gear Solid 2 came out.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 2 was, as a kid in 2001, my most anticipated game. It's the only game that I've ever beat in one sitting.
Oh wow.
And it was like 12 straight hours. It wasn't like a short game. But I have major problems with Sons of Liberty, and just in the fact that you don't play a Solid Snake for literally 80% of the game. And that's like a mind-boggling
do that.
decision. It's a mind-boggling decision for that game. So yeah, I mean, I hate to let Metal Gear Solid go, but I think it's the right move. I think it is.
All right. Well, round 1 is done. So thank you everyone who voted in the polls. Really appreciate it. We had a really great turnout in all regions polls this year. So thank you so much for voting. And make sure you vote again next year whenever we decide to whip up another March Madness. But we have 1, 2, 3 more rounds to get through. So let's fire it back up to the top. We have, Chad, I'm just gonna say I feel bad for you because
I know, dude. I'm piecing it together in my head as we're going.
These 4 matchups,
yeah, dude,
are
It's
going
going
to be
murder
brutal.
him.
Pain.
yeah.
Pain. Great pain.
And we're going up against Grand Theft Auto 3.
So you totally broke up. What's going up against Grand Theft Auto?
The
3?
Last
of Us. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how's this round work now?
So now
This one is all you.
It's all you, brother.
You pick a winner, but you have to like convince us. Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with The Last of Us. Actually, I'm just going to pick a winner. Last of Us.
Okay.
I think The Last of Us is, like I said earlier, the best story in gaming. I think it's a studio, again, stepping away from what they've known in Uncharted, doing something new and finding that lightning in a bottle that every studio is trying to find currently. Beautiful story between two, a father and daughter like element going on, even though it's not technically his daughter. And it's a beautifully heartfelt story told in a horrifyingly violent and overrun world. And those two parallels go phenomenally together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that. Do I need to convince you on this one?
I was sold.
Yeah,
I
mean,
honestly thought it would just be harder for you because you love Grand Theft Auto 6.
I do, but the problem is I love
going
The
up
Last
against-
of Us.
yeah.
Yeah,
Going up against a juggernaut.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really is.
The panel agrees.
Yeah.
All right.
Nothing to say.
All right. Well,
Quickest matchup.
that was. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be. I really think it's gonna be hard for anyone to go up against The Last of Us.
Yeah.
It really
But-
is. Yeah,
But we shall see because they have another matchup, and they will be facing the winner of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 or God of War 2018.
okay. I have to think through this here. So I'm going to argue for Spider-Man 2. And I'm going to argue because, again, I keep bringing this up, and I'm sorry, but it is a studio stepping out, trying something new from what they've been doing the past, however many years. And I remember Insomniac Spider-Man being a rumor for a long, long time, and then finally being confirmed at E3, and it was like the coolest thing in the world because rumors very rarely in the gaming community have any weight to them. There's a lot of rumors that don't come out.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man 2 takes everything that the original Spider-Man did and just amplifies it. It's more beautiful. The gameplay is way better. The city's way more alive, I guess is the best way to put it. It literally feels like a living, breathing city. The story retells some of the best stories in comics for my money. Huge moments playing as Venom, the whole symbiote story, playing that in a video game, even though it's been done in the past, it has not been done to the extent that Insomniac did it. And I think they absolutely nailed it through and through. And while I think God of War is a very important game for that franchise moving forward, I think Spider-Man 2 is very important for the new franchise of Spider-Man, because it really laid a lot of groundworks for what will probably be their third and final game in the trilogy. And I can't freaking wait for it.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much, to convince. Because I think one of the strengths of this region of the bracket in particular is the innovation category, because of exactly what you said. You get a lot of these studios who aren't afraid to completely step outside of their comfort zone and try something brand new. And for whatever reason, when companies do that on Sony for PlayStation, it always works.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah, I'm fine with that. What does the rest of the panel say? Dead.
I'm definitely good with that.
Well, that was a dumb question.
Yeah,
my mind was made up before we started this matchup.
Right.
Yeah, he wants Spider-Man to go all the way to the end.
I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be amazing.
All right, moving right along. Ghost of Tsushima, the number 11 seed, against Devil May Cry, the 14 seed.
Yeah, so I think everybody knows what I'm going to argue for. Sorry, Kumino, I apologize, but it's going to be Tsushima that I'm arguing for here. And again, dude, it is actually bizarre to think about all the studios that made new IPs that popped off. Like, this is like the third one in a row. New IP, and it's hugely popular, right? And Sucker Punch did games. They had the same kind of thing going on that Guerrilla had, where they had a popular game, but it just wasn't as popular as some of the other games that were out at the time that were doing the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was
Infamous?
Yeah, I loved Infamous.
And they're great. They're great games, dude. And Infamous Second Son, the one that came out on the PS4, a lot of people hated that game. That was like a launch title for the PS4 that showed the power of the PS4. That game is still beautiful today. Like, that game is, the graphics in the game are great. But anyway, it's
five games. Wow.
Yeah.
Infamous.
It's a studio stepping out, doing something new that we really haven't had. And if we have had it, we haven't had it in a long time. And that's an open world samurai game. And like I said, I do think there are shortcomings to the game. We'll leave those out. But gameplay wise, phenomenal. Graphic wise, it is the most beautiful game probably in the bracket. I mean, there are just spots in that game that are absolutely breathtaking. And it's cool because it's the same it's kind of the same thing as The Last of Us, where it's these huge beautiful open areas, the opposite of The Last of Us, huge beautiful open areas interspliced with horrifyingly terrible violence and blood, right? Because it's a very violent time frame in history. So I think the innovations that Ghost of Tsushima made for open world games, as far as kind of removing yourself from a mini map or the need to be on a map, trying to see where you're going with the wind thing, that's one of the most innovative steps forward for a game that I've ever seen. That, it can be hard sometimes playing a Grand Theft Auto game and you got a waypoint going and you're just stuck on the mini map trying to see where your waypoint's going. You're not even watching. And there are games that have done, Watch Dogs put like street signs to show you which way to go and that, but Tsushima keeps you in the world the whole time. You don't need to go onto the map. It's the most immersive game, most immersive experience. The only one that has a similar sense of discovery was Breath of the Wild. Where it was just like around every corner there was something badass that you were finding. And
wonder if that game's on this in this tournament anywhere.
Interesting.
And so I think that just for the innovations that it made in the open world genre, it's not I hope it picks up, because that's a cool way to keep you immersed in the game and keep you off the menus, right?
Mhm.
Go ahead. Shoot me with whatever.
Kumino, we'll let you start this off as a big Devil May Cry stan. How do you feel? Are you okay with Ghosts moving forward? Do you need more of an argument?
Nah, I don't need an argument. I completely agree. In all honesty, part of the reason that Devil May Cry barely made it is because it's older, and a lot of people don't really know about it. Like, even if they know who Dante is, they don't know him because they started there
Right.
with Dante.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I can't argue it.
Okay. Now, Dad, in your brief time in Ghosts,
Yes.
how do you feel about the game as in general?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely deserves to go forward.
Nice. That was the hard-hitting analysis I was looking for.
Really?
What else do you want from me?
I mean,
Chad has
I'm
made
doing
the
great.
argument. I agree with him. There you
What
go.
he's used to is us giving our compelling arguments, but I mean, in this particular case, the way that this bracket is honestly and truly set up, like the ones that's moving forward, I believe all of us see them moving forward the way that it is going.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Chad's a great presenter of arguments. So
Yes.
Yeah.
with that being
I don't
said,
know.
we are on to our final match of round 2. And it is the 7 seed Bloodborne against another 7, and that is Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Shockingly, number 15 seed. But
Crazy.
here we are, second round. Let's say you.
Okay. This is a tough one, and I'm probably going to get PlayStation fans hating me, but I'm going to argue for Final Fantasy 7. Again, taking a old JRPG, probably the most important JRPG ever made, and modernizing it to such an extent that it stands on its own today. It's not a pixel remaster like some of the other Final Fantasy things we've gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And just the hype for Final Fantasy 7 alone, the remake alone. I mean, it seemed like it was a decade people were saying that this game was coming or hoping this game would come. And while I do think that it did take some odd deviations, I get that Square Enix is like so anti turn-based now for whatever reason. I get why they did it. And the way they do it in the game is actually pretty cool, because there are snippets of turn-based where you can kind of pause it to pull up your spells and then go back to the action. So that's a cool way to do it. That's a cool way to keep things kind of, where you came from, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this game's just burning hot, dude, and it's a no-brainer. It's I don't think it's the best Final Fantasy game ever. I think it's the most important Final Fantasy game ever. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be burning bright for a while. We see that with Rebirth right now. I mean, you can't get on any gaming anything and not see something about Rebirth.
It's massive.
So it's cool that they're splicing it into 3 different games. It is a long game. It is I think Resident Evil 2 did a hell of a job remaking a game. I think that was a badass remake. This is up there with it, maybe even surpassing it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the graphical fidelity, the changes to the gameplay. I have to assume that they're adding heavy amounts of story stuff into it as well. So it's cool that we're getting a remake that is fleshing out in the proper way the original story.
And that's, as someone who hasn't played the Final Fantasy remake, but someone who has thoroughly enjoyed the Resident Evil 2 remake. If you're saying it's better of a remake than Resident Evil 2, that's pretty high praise, because Resident Evil 2 remake was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on board for that. It looks like Kumino's on board for it.
You know it.
Dad's shaking his head
vigorously
in agreement.
I got a lot of love for Final Fantasy 7.
Nice. Well, we're down to the Sweet 16 round, the final 4 teams in the PlayStation or the Sony bracket, and we're back up to the number 1 seed, The Last of Us, against the number 12 seed, Spider-Man 2. And just immediately after I say that matchup, the center of our screen, head down, hiding behind the microphone, both Dad and Chad,
We didn't even. Yeah,
just
yeah.
sadness all
We know.
around.
We know.
But see,
Yeah,
that's
man.
the thing. Like, y'all can't. It's really about what do you want to go
What do you?
take to the argument with the other nation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Your best
100%.
argument. Yep.
And that was a big. I mean, there were a couple like Uncharted 4 I was struggling with for that reason because I felt like Uncharted would have stood up a little bit more. It's going to probably get eliminated anyway, but Tsushima, I mean. But yeah, it's a good point. That's a good point. And really, here, dude, at the end of the day, for my money, I know I'm a huge freaking PlayStation fanboy, yada, 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 whatever you want to say. The Last of Us is the winner of this tournament. In my mind, it's a no-brainer. Not to detract from Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is a phenomenal game. It's just not at the level of anything that Naughty Dog has done. And, you know, Insomniac, I think, is working that way. I think they can become Naughty Dog at some point. If they're not even already there, they might already be there. But The Last of Us is just the best game ever made. So it's I mean, I don't know if I even have to convince you. I mean, because I know Dad is a big Spider-Man guy, right? But you also like The Last of Us too, correct?
Yes.
Have you played
So
the
it's-
games or just seen the show, Chad or Dad?
I've played a little bit of
Hmm.
Last of Us.
So, yeah, I mean, I think importance-wise for this bracket, it's a no-brainer here for The Last of Us. It's
Well,
just
Then I would ask you,
Okay.
community-wise,
mhm.
how does it stand up against Spider-Man?
As far as what?
Like
Reception.
Popularity?
Fan base?
Yeah.
Or
popularity, fan base.
Yeah, it's hugely more popular than Spider-Man 2. And I think even, you know, I'm saying it's the best video game ever made. I think that a lot of people think that. And the cool thing about The Last of Us is, like I said earlier, it's one of those games that somebody that has never played a video game in their life can sit down and enjoy watching because it's just that great of a narrative, that it's stunningly beautiful. So it's an important game. And then I have a lot of people that I like work with that aren't gamers that have played The Last of Us and love it. So it's a game that kind of transcends gaming as a whole. I mean, there are people that literally bought a PlayStation 3 so they could play this game.
Mhm.
So any game that can sell a console like that at the end of its life cycle, you got to remember, this is like a very,
last
very
games.
late PlayStation 3 game.
Right, and you got to remember they remade it 3 times. Well, they remade it 2 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for each one, the 3, the 4, and the 5. So
Yeah. And I will say the remake for the 5 is awesome, dude. It's so good. It's so good. Like, you wouldn't think, like, I know that we talked shit about it when we first heard it. Like, why does a game that came out in 2013 need a remake?
Mhm.
But let me tell you, if you played Last of Us Part 2, you know that it did, because everything that the advances they made in that and now have put into Part 1, which is the remake, well worth it, dude. Well worth it. And it was like a $10 upgrade, I thought, too, maybe.
Oh, that's not
be
bad.
wrong.
But fun fact, if the show came out like a month sooner, there's a solid chance that The Last of Us could be a winner of the
Could have
2023
been.
and 2024
Yeah,
March
it could have
Madness
been,
tournament
dude.
here. So that would have been interesting.
That would have been
yeah.
very interesting for sure. Yeah,
But-
I think. I mean, I don't know that I have to make too much more of an argument, but ask your questions. Ask whatever you want.
I'm sold. I mean,
I'm
it's
sold
hard.
too.
I don't know. Well, I mean, the championship, if The Last of Us makes it into the championship, looking at the 2 games that it's going against, there's, I don't know, the final 4 games are going to be very, very tough to argue
gonna
with
be
each
tough.
other.
right. And that's what I'm thinking about. That's why I want him to consider every aspect of it. Like, when somebody sits down and they say, "Hey, what is the greatest game of all time?"
Yeah.
Will Last of Us be that game? Can it truly be that game?
Let me tell you.
I think it can stand up.
I've played a lot of games. I've played a lot of games. The Last of Us is the only game that has emotionally exhausted me.
Same, dude.
Like,
the only game that made me cry. Yeah.
I got to the end, I rolled credits, and I was like, this is better than 90% of the movies I've watched.
Yes.
And I got to control the story. Like, this is literally the greatest thing ever.
Kumino, have you played it?
No.
Oh man.
Oh boy.
You might need to. Yeah, you might need to play this, man.
I think these might be the only two people in the world that have not played it or sitting here in this episode.
I have the remastered.
I didn't play it because I was broke.
That's a fair argument. Yeah,
it's valid.
Yeah.
So yeah, but trust me, I'll get around to playing it eventually. Because all I've heard is great things about it, and the fact that it came along and was able to give a TV show,
and the fact that this is a totally different argument or like nothing to do with the game, but like the show is such a faithful retelling.
Really is, dude.
Story of the game. Even like there are so many screenshots and images from the game you put side by side. It's
1-to-1 rips. 1-to-1. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. I stayed away from the show because I want to play the game.
You need to. Yeah. You need to stay away. I agree with that because while I think the show does a great job, it does rush certain parts of the game. So some of the super emotional beats didn't land as heavy in the show. And that might be the separation between watching something and playing something where you're an active participant in it over here and you're just watching it over here. That might be the correlation there. Maybe it wasn't rushed. Maybe it's just the difference between games and movies or shows. But yeah, it's like a 15-hour game too. It's not a super long game. So check it out for sure. You have to.
Dad, wait, you have the remake, you said?
I do.
Which one?
For PS4.
Right, I was just about to ask.
Yeah.
Can I play that on my 5?
You can play the PS4 one on your 5, but I would heavily talk you into purchasing another game, as I often do at the end of these episodes.
Dang it! I'm gonna be buying another game.
Yeah, I would watch it. I would check it. I would check for a sale. Watch for a sale. It's worth. If you're first time playing it, the definitive way to play it currently is part 1, without a question. The remake, the PS5 remake.
Have any of you, and this is for the viewers and listeners as well, have any of you ever heard of G2A.com?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I haven't used it very much, but yes,
it's a good place to go and get a nice discount on games.
It's similar to a CD keys type. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know. It seems like every encounter I have with one of those websites, something goes wrong. Like I think dad tried to buy me something on one of those websites, gave me the code and the code didn't work. So, and that's not the first time that's happened in the past. Somebody else bought me something and the code didn't work. So it's a little sketch for me. Like I'd rather just wait for like a Steam sale or a PlayStation sale. But
I mean, I understand. But that's where, like, when my son said he want a game, all right, let me go G2A.
You go there,
to see what I can find on discount.
Hey, it's sure. I'm all about saving money, that's for sure. Let's head up this last match to get to the finals of the Sony region, and but first we got to get through Ghost of Tsushima, the 11 seed, versus Final Fantasy 7, the 15 seed.
Okay. So to clarify here, I'm getting one game out of this entire bracket, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to argue.
The winner
I've been talking up Final Fantasy so much all night that it's hard for me to argue the other way that I really want to argue.
I'm gonna just put it to you like this: go ahead and give it a Final Fantasy, and here's why: because a casual gamer, they can't sit down and play Tsushima.
Right.
They're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to take your girlfriend, your wife who doesn't game, and be like, "Here, baby, play this." They're going to get mad. They're going to throw your controller. Now y'all arguing because you got to spend $70 on a new controller. Just go with Final Fantasy. And then, like I
out here
said,
trying to save relationships, guys.
right. And then, you know what? I'm not going to say the main character. No, the main villain is in Smash for Final Fantasy, and it has 3 animated movies. Come on, man.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
So
it has to be Final Fantasy.
here's my hang up with your argument. And the hang up is that I feel like Tsushima is the game that you could sit down and play as a casual gamer. Final Fantasy VII certainly is not that game, just because of its JRPG roots. I mean, JRPGs are an acquired taste for most gamers, let alone casual gamers. You know what I mean? And it's the same argument we said with Persona earlier, where the casual gamer cannot sit down and play Persona, right? Tsushima stands on its own. It's an open world game. Your girlfriend's going to think it's freaking beautiful. She's going to be watching it the whole time because around every corner. Yeah, around every corner.
She's going to be like, well, why I can't build a house? I want to build a house over there.
So I don't know. I feel like it, and here, don't get me wrong, man. I love Final Fantasy VII. It's hard for me to look at that criteria and say Final Fantasy VII.
Which, hey, that's the ultimate judge right there. That criteria.
It's hard for me to think that a casual gamer could sit down with Final Fantasy VII Remake and get into it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they could. Maybe the steps that the remake has taken to deviate from the original gives it that opportunity, and that might be the case, right?
Yeah. It makes
and that might be the whole reason.
It's way more fluid. Battling is definitely nowhere near as hard as it is in Tsushima.
Right.
So, like, you're going to be able to get that. You're being told a great, fantastic story with awesome cutscenes.
Yeah.
Whereas with Persona, you getting those same things with Persona, but it's going to be that cartoony aspect and the unrealistic aspect. Whereas Final Fantasy, it does a great job of balancing the two.
Yeah, and I do think that where Tsushima falls short is the story. I don't think that Tsushima has this amazing story. I really don't even think that's what the game is about. You know what I mean? I think the game is about the world and being in that world. The story is meh, if I'm being honest with you. The characters also pretty meh, if I'm being honest with you. It's really the world and the fact that you're playing an open world game. That's the selling point for Tsushima.
As a samurai.
It's, and that's the kind of downfall of being the first entry of probably what's going to become a series. It's heavily rumored that we're going to get an announcement of 2 in the coming months. That's the perfect. I mean, it makes sense now that they're releasing it on PC that we would be getting an announcement for a sequel soon to build that hype. But I get it. I know Final Fantasy VII is a amazing story, and if we're looking at games for my money, it's got to have a really good story. Like I can't get into games like Helldivers 2, prime example. Looks like a fun game. Don't know that the story's there. I can't get into it. That's the hang up I have with most multiplayer games is there's just no story. And that's why I play games. That's why I come to play games is for the stories. And so Final Fantasy VII will be my argument for that fact. For its deep history of bringing JRPGs into the mainstream and for its huge steps moving and adapting that JRPG formula to give it to a modern audience. As much as it pains me, as much as my katana is bleeding behind me back here, I get it.
There's
the villain. Yeah, the villain I think uses a katana, so I can't say.
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah. Sephiroth uses katana.
Yeah.
My katanas, they're in there. They're crying as well.
Yeah. And that's I just need to get sucked into the world of Final Fantasy VII because I
Dude,
didn't
it's
know there were
so
movies.
good.
I didn't know there were movies to go along with it.
My God.
I
Mike
didn't know
disappeared
that.
again.
Yep, it's gone. I didn't know they had 3 animated movies. And I love Kuno. If you watch our show at all, I love building myself into like a content bubble. So whatever game I'm playing, I like only watching movies or TV shows that are similar to the game.
Oh,
So it
you
seems
should
like a good
definitely
little
watch
bubble.
it.
The total
Yeah.
immersion effect.
Yeah,
You're in it.
Total immersion. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's why I'm super excited for Rise of the Ronin coming up here because I think Rise of the Ronin is going to bitch slap Ghost of Tsushima down, but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. Very excited. It's like 11 days away. So
Awesome.
All right, so let's do. Oh man, are you ready for the final matchup?
I am.
The Last of Us versus Final Fantasy VII.
All right. Now, I'm going to tell you like this because I give everybody the same advice. Now, yes, the thing that you're arguing to sell it to us, but you also arguing to sell it to yourself, but you also don't want to throw everything out there. You want to keep some ammunition for whatever it is you're going to be taking to the debate.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to make sure you can tick off all those boxes from the criteria,
Right.
Everything.
Every last one of the boxes. You want to be able to hit them.
And well, not just hit them, but smash them.
Hit them and hit them hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like both of these games can do that for you.
I think they can. Yeah, I definitely think they can. But if again, man, for my money, I think The Last of Us gives me the better chance to argue against really anything else in the competition. Even looking at the other brackets, I don't think there's really anything that comes close to The Last of Us.
Right. Because I believe, for your sake, Final Fantasy is actually ported on other stuff.
It is. It is.
So Last of Us isn't.
Yeah.
It is
I would say we go with Last of Us.
Yeah. I mean, it is the PlayStation game. It is the crown jewel of PlayStation. And that's saying a lot. That's saying a hell of a lot because not only did we have an entire bracket of crown jewels, full of crown jewels, we left a lot, and I mean a hell of a lot of crown jewels off of this bracket, right? So saying that The Last of Us is the crown jewel amongst all of those is really, really, really saying something. And for my money, man, there's not a game that can get close to it.
That's a really good argument. I would hold that.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a game that comes close to the aesthetics, the story, everything in those categories can be easily argued against anything for The Last of Us in my mind. So my pick obviously is The Last of Us, and that's not to say that Final Fantasy VII couldn't go on and do those exact things, right?
Right.
It could.
That's absolutely correct. Like Final Fantasy, if it wasn't up against The Last of Us, I would definitely be on Final Fantasy side. But Last of Us, for the modern era, The Last of Us is going to be it because more people are okay, where can you watch The Last of Us? Is it on an actual channel?
It's HBO.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, HBO Max. We're in the era of streaming services where people they're going to be wanting to binge watch something. They're going to come across Last of Us. They're going to watch it, and then they're going to be telling somebody about it. And be like, "Yeah, that's a video game." They're like, "Wait, it's a video game," and it's going to make them want to go play that video game.
Yes.
Or at the very least, have a look at somebody else playing the video game.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I've heard of Final Fantasy. I know that dude with the big sword and the dude with the long white hair and the dark overcoat. I know them.
Yeah.
But The Last of Us, more people in this modern era are gonna know of that, and I feel like that should be your selling point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
agree. And the other thing to go alongside that is you know, The Last of Us came out in 2013. It's still burning bright because of the show right now, right? It's got maybe more popularity. It's bringing in a whole new group of people into The Last of Us. And you're right. Some of them are going to pick up the game. Some of them are going to buy consoles to play the game. So it's a hell of a move for Sony to make the show. And lucky for them, it broke the video game curse, of shows and movies, right? It's a phenomenal show.
Yeah,
so
the best adaptation.
And I've even like heard people say, like, watch the show, never played the game. They're like, I can only imagine, like, the show is amazing. I can only imagine how good the game is. And really, it's much better. It really is. It really is. Not to say the show's not great. I think it's phenomenal, but the game, dude, is just, it is the perfect chef's kiss game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Perfection.
Yeah. And as I, you know, dropped out there for a second, you might have said something along these lines, but like the Last of Us is the pinnacle of how you can tell a story using gameplay.
Yep.
Like, there have been some great stories in games before The Last of Us, but like The Last of Us blew everything from the past out of the water, and honestly, I think still has been hard to live up to since its release. And it's coming on 10 years old. And
I definitely agree with that. And you know, where I think so Metal Gear Solid was the first game that was like, dude, this is what video games can be. This is our first step out of the, you know, 10-year-olds playing video games. This is an adult game telling an adult story very, very well. It's the very first one that you're like, dude, games can really be much more than they have been in the past. I think The Last of Us is the perfection of that original thought, right? This is what video games can be. These are the stories we can only tell in video games, even though it has a show now. I get it. And I said, I think there are some stuff that is lost in the translation between the show and the game. But that's the final cap of that original Metal Gear Solid, spark.
Yeah. Plus, absolutely banging soundtrack that I still occasionally listen to.
For sure. Man.
Well, hey, we made it through the Sony region of the bracket. Our final four is set.
Yeah.
This has been a super fun month of podcasting that secretly has been done in like a week for Kumino, Dad and I. So, but no, I think obviously we still have our final four and championship episode that will be coming out next week, and this will be returning to the format that we had last year, where the opponents on the side of each side of the bracket will be debating each other, and the judge panel will be. We will be, if you watched last year, we held a legitimate debate, timed rounds. The judges asked questions, like it was a legit debate. We're going to be doing that with our guests that we're on, representing each region, and the winners will be facing each other in the championship. That'll all be in the same episode. That'll be coming out next week. It's gonna be crazy because
can you say the fine? Because I haven't watched anything because I didn't want to know going into this.
Yeah,
what it was.
We have not told any of the other people who made it from the other regions,
right,
so
right.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's why I look. Listen, that's why I said take the game that you feel is the best one that you would win with.
Yeah.
I gave every last one of them that same advice.
Yeah.
I think
everyone's chosen well.
Yeah, man. I think looking at it, I think I did. I think I took the game that I can win this with, and I've got the chance to go back-to-back years on these March Madnesses because I had House of the Dragon last year. That
you have a pretty good chance.
Yeah,
there's and I will say, looking just at the final four the final four games, each game is an absolute juggernaut powerhouse.
Yeah,
like
it's gonna be wild.
This is gonna be good. But thank you guys so much for watching all month long. If you enjoy what you've seen, make sure you subscribe here. Go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/showbizpodcast. Go follow Kumino over on Twitch. His link for his Twitch and his Twitter are in the episode description. Chad, of course, thank you for being on tonight. And I was joking around with Nick, like, what's it feel like not having to podcast so much?
Yeah.
'Cause you guys basically get the month off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's been weird. It's been weird for sure. So did we run like way longer than the other episodes?
Actually, no.
Okay. I felt like I
been
was
around
like being
2
like super
No,
long-winded.
that
at
the
points.
first the first rounds of all the episodes were very
Super long,
because
yeah,
you're introducing all 16 or
Yeah.
all 16 games. So
Mhm.
but yeah, thank you guys so much. Make sure you tune in next week. Find out who wins 2024 Showboys March Madness Console Wars Edition. Until then, you guys have a wonderful evening.
Peace.
Ooh yeah.
I'm trying to think. He's gone.
Yeah, he's
He's
gone.
done.
Oh,
Somehow I'm in the hot seat now.
right,
I-
Dad's
I-
back in the hot seat.
Take it
I,
away.
so Dad,
I am
you
not the
are
representative.
one.
I
You
am
are
not
the
the one.
representative.
I'm
You
not.
have to represent it. You have to hold it
Spider-Man
down for the
2.
PlayStation side.
Spider-Man
Spider-Man
2
2 all the
going
way.
all the way. Only one Dad's played.
I can't wait until my stupid internet thing.
I love that you bought it during your outage. You're
Right.
just like, screw this, dude. How
Listen.
how far did Starfield make it?
It didn't make it nowhere.
I thought originally that when I glanced over that his little avatar was a samurai, but it's definitely not a samurai.